Hello, my name is Kelsey Dean, and today I'm going to talk about cross-site study startup. So the objectives for today is you are a Children's Mercy or KU Med researcher, and you're trying to recruit and enroll patients at the other institution. So today we're going to talk about how you can get research started when you're engaging patients not at your institution, and also provide tips and startup resources for researchers. So there's two things to consider. One is, or the main one to decide is where will be the primary institution. So that's where you'll get started in your study startup. Typically, it is where the funding's being awarded, which is the same place as the PI's home institution. So wherever the funding is going and the PI is employed, that will be your primary institution. So for the purposes IRB, the primary institution we'll call the lead site, and the other institution will be the relying site. So I'll give an example. I was working on a study with Dr. Davis. She got awarded a grant, and so that was going to KUMC, but the research actually wasn't going to happen at KUMC. We were not going to be an enrolling site. We were the data coordinating center. So in that case, we still had the lead IRB be KU, and the contract came out of KU. But what we did is we had different sites who we had subawards with. One of them was Children's Mercy. So we called them a clinical site, and KUMC was a data coordinating center. So what happened is once we got the contract initially set up at KUMC, we issued a subaward to Children's Mercy. And that included a budget for the study, including the participant stipends and subaward for the Children's Mercy staff salary. So the KUMC also reviewed the study for the IRB. And what happened there is we used Smart IRB, which is a IRB reliance system. And so KU had the lead IRB, and we issued consent forms to each site. So Children's Mercy received a KU consent form that had Children's Mercy's local context listed in there and is stamped by KUMC. But the Children's Mercy IRB accepted that, and they were able to use that consent form. And all of the data we stored on the KUMC REDCap, and Children's Mercy personnel were granted access to that KUMC REDCap. So today I'll talk about 4 steps to getting cross-site study startups going. The first one I'm going to talk about contracts. Also, things to consider when setting up the lead IRB and the relying IRB for the secondary site, and also how to get your external personnel access to the other site. So here is a study startup timeline. So what I want to talk about with this is that contracts take the longest. Typically, if it's very fast, it could take a couple months. I've seen them go as long as 6 months. So today I'll talk about things to try to get that contract shorter. But one thing that limits the contract is you have to have the notice of award or the funding secured before you can start making progress on that contract. The good news is you can start your IRB submission and start that reliance with the other site even before you get the notice of award. Often you need that anyway for the just-in-time documentation as they're preparing for that award. So you may have your IRB set up several months before the contract and the award actually come in. So the lead IRB can be started independently. So you would choose your home institution, make that your lead IRB. get things set up there. And then once that lead IRB is approved, you can go to the next step, which is get your relying IRB set up at the other site. External personnel access, you may or may not need this, but if you do, then those people just need to be on the IRB. And once you have your IRB set up, your people in place, and your contract, then you can start your study. So the first thing I'll talk about is the contracts. So Children's Mercy and KU Med have similar systems. They both use the My Research Suite platform. And how you get your contract and subaward set up is through My Agreements. Each institution has their own. These slides will be available in the comment section of the video. So you can click on that and find a link to the slides, or I can send it to you directly if you need these. So the best thing to do is to log into your institution's My Agreements page and start a new submission. It's very important to get this started because they could track the timeline and how long it took and who it was sent to or get assigned to a person in the grants office. So always have this submitted, even if you have questions or it's not fully complete. That way it'll get assigned to someone. It'll be in their inbox, so they'll be working on it. But if you have any questions about this process or it's got assigned and you aren't sure where it's at, you can email the SPA at kumc.edu at KUMC or at Children's Mercy. That would be your research business partner, and I put their shared email below. So although the IRB can be set up prior to the contract, I have the contracts listed first just because it takes the longest. So that's one we want to be sure that we're on top of as quickly as possible. But the next step would be setting up your lead IRB. And if your home institution's KU, you can find all of the KU protocol templates, consent form templates, recruitment information templates on the KUMC website. So I put a link in there, or you could just Google KUMC IRB, and it's on the public available website, so you can find that, all the templates you might need through there. So once you have your templates, and you have a draft of your protocol, draft of your consent form, you can start a submission in e-compliance, which is soon moving to My IRB, which will be in that research suite. But right now, it's ecompliance.ku.edu, and you would log in with your KUMC account and start a submission there. For Children's Mercy, all of the IRB forms, templates, consent templates are all saved in the library tab of the MyIRB platform. So you would go to the My IRB, log in with your Children's Mercy credentials, and then navigate to the library tab where you could find all those templates and documents that are helpful. And just like KU, you would start a submission in the Children's Mercy MyIRB platform. So once you have your lead IRB approved, then you can do the next step, which is setting up your relying site IRB. So this would be the other institution. So if your home institution's KU and you're wanting to do research at Children's Mercy would be the relying IRB. So the system is set up almost exactly the same as starting out that initial IRB. You would go to the MyIRB platform, start a study, but there is a checkbox in there on the very first page of the submission where you would indicate that an external IRB will act as IRB of record. So that will shorten your all the amount of forms you need to submit, because it's telling the system that this has already been approved somewhere else. And so all that the platform will ask for is the IRB approval letter from the other institution, the protocol, and the stamped consent form. And if there's any site-specific recruitment materials you could upload in there, but it is an abbreviated form, an abbreviated process. So the next step, while those are working, you can start getting your external personnel set up. So the process is different at KU and at Children's Mercy. At KU, almost any outside researcher would be considered an affiliate, so a research affiliate or setting up affiliate account. And so there is a link to a guidance document on everything you need to do to get that set up. But basically, there's a link that the external personnel can go to, and they would take an information security training through a website called SABA. And once they get that certificate back, then that can be submitted to your account requester in your department at KUMC. So usually that's an administrator. So they would indicate that that person had completed their security training, and then also check what access they need. So typically they would need a KUMC account. If they're going to be on the IRB at KUMC, they would need conflict of interest access so they can complete a KU conflict of interest form. If they need REDCap access or access to shared drive or the medical record access, then all those things you would tell your account requester, and they can submit a ticket to get all of those set up. On the Children's Mercy side, if you have a KU person who needs access to Children's Mercy, there's a couple different ways of doing it. So there's a different process for students and fellows, because those people will need to get approval through GME or graduate medical education. So they'll need to show proof of their immunizations and some other things, other boxes they'll need to check. So if you have that, I'll make this link live, where it's called the External Personnel Onboarding Form, and it's a REDCap page. So you can submit, the Children's Mercy study coordinator or research team on that side can submit this form to get that KU person, that KU student or fellow access. If the person you need access is not a student or fellow, they are KUMC staff or some type of contract worker, then it's a different process. We don't need to go through GME, so we don't need to go through this REDCap form. So what you would do in that case is to email your Children's Mercy Department administrator. For the Center for Healthy Lifestyles and Nutrition, that's Joy Delgandio. So you would email her and just say, you know, we're adding this person. They need a Children's Mercy logon, EMR access, access to Teams, or whatever access that they need. And Joy can request that through the Children's Mercy side. So this next page is different research links that may be helpful. KU has a great research admin website that has all kinds of tips and other access to things you might need. The My Research Suite encompasses all these things we talked about: my agreements, conflict of interest, IRB, and then my sponsored projects. But one thing I did not spend a lot of time on is there's a form if you are needing, if the research is happening at KU and you're going to be using the pharmacy or the lab or billing, or you're going to be seeing patients on site, and there's a form that can get your study in the queue to get reviewed by these different services. So that's called a clinical research activation form. And that's something that's important to fill out if your study is happening at KU and you need those services. For Children's Mercy, a lot of the research links are on the internal website on the scope. So I have a link to that there when we have that My Research portal, which has all those same platforms that KU does. So you may have questions that are more specific to your study or maybe needing some help. If you do, please reach out. So I work at Children's Mercy and through the Center of Children's Healthy Lifestyle and Nutrition. So if you have any questions about those studies, feel free to email me. My name is Kelsey Dean. And if you're working on any ISBCTN or Spectre studies, that contact would be Christina Foster. Or if you're on the KUMC side working on a KUMC PEDS study, Meggie Olade is the best contact there. But feel free to reach out if you need anything. And if there's anything that we should add to these slides or any videos we need to make later, please let us know and we'll add that to our list. Thank you so much. Bye.